After a night of champagne and secrets, billionaire Graham Langford walked into his mansion, only to be met by silence and a divorce folder. The scent of jasmine still lingered in the hallway. Faint but unmistakable. Claire had once called it the smell of truth, though Graham, in his usual dismissiveness, had said it reminded him of potpourri. Now, it clung to the air like a whisper he couldn't ignore. He tossed his keys on the marble console, shrugging off his blazer with one arm while balancing a half-loosened bow tie in the other. The foyer was too quiet. No hum from the distant kitchen. No shuffle of Lucille's cautious steps. No late-night television murmuring from the den. Just stillness. And that damned jasmine. The cold draft snaking through the open balcony door was the second anomaly. The third was Claire, sitting in the conservatory. She didn't look up when he entered. Her hands rested on her lap. One palm splayed protectively over the subtle swell of her stomach. Her hair was pulled back. Not in the casual bun she wore at home, but in a smooth, deliberate chignon, the kind she wore to depositions. He smirked, stepping in, his voice dripping with false charm. "Well, this is ominous. You waiting up for me like some noir villainess? What's next? Martini with a cyanide twist." Claire didn't blink. Her gaze remained fixed on the floor-to-ceiling window, where the moonlight carved shadows into the stone garden. Then, as if on cue, she turned and placed a manila folder on the glass table between them. "You left the balcony door open," she said, her voice calm. "You let the wind in." He stared at the folder, eyebrows raised. "What's this? Tax season's early? You can read," she said, with a softness that somehow felt more like a slap. He laughed, a short, unconvincing bark. "Come on, Claire, it's 2 in the morning. Whatever fight this is, can't it wait until I'm not half drunk and freezing?" "No," she said. Her fingers tapped the folder once. Deliberate, controlled. Graham hesitated. Then, with a theatrical sigh, he sank into the armchair opposite her and flipped it open. Divorce. The word was typed clean and clinical, repeated across multiple pages, but somehow it punched harder than if she'd screamed it. His name, her name, assets, custody, clauses. He skimmed, faster now, then stopped. "No warning?" he said. "No conversation? You just serve me this like a cold entree?" Claire tilted her head. "You've had more than one warning, but you were always too busy entertaining strangers to notice." He sat back, mouth parted, disbelief mingled with irritation. "Claire, I know look, I know things haven't been, this is a lot. Can we talk about this like adults?" "I am talking," she replied. "You're performing." He opened his mouth to argue, but her eyes stopped him. They weren't angry. That was the most disarming part. They weren't wounded either, just settled, like the eyes of someone who had walked through fire and come out the other side. No longer afraid of smoke. She stood, slowly. "I don't need your signature," she said. "The clauses on betrayal are already activated." He blinked. What clauses? But she was already turning, walking toward the hallway with the fluid certainty of someone who had practiced this scene in her mind countless times. As she passed the housekeeper, Lucille, standing quietly at the archway with downcast eyes, Claire gave a small nod. Nothing more. Graham stared down at the folder again, heart thudding now, not from the threat of divorce, but from the name stamped neatly on the upper right corner. Whitmore and Hayes LLP. Graham flips the folder, sees Whitmore and Hayes LLP on the legal header. By dawn, Claire was gone, but the silence she left behind was louder than any scream. The Langford estate felt cavernous now. The scent of jasmine had vanished, replaced by cold marble and a hollow echo that trailed Graham wherever he moved. He wandered the halls in yesterday's tuxedo shirt, half unbuttoned, eyes bloodshot, not from alcohol, but from something worse, uncertainty. He stared at the folder again, opened flat on the dining table. Pages annotated in Claire's crisp, no-nonsense handwriting. She hadn't used a lawyer from his usual Rolodex. She'd chosen Whitmore and Hayes, her grandfather's old firm, steeped in tradition, but quietly ruthless. He had underestimated her. At 11:08 a.m., Logan arrived with his usual precision. Slim, fast-talking, and always 2 steps behind what Graham needed. "I called Sylvia. She's en route," Logan said, setting a cappuccino next to the untouched breakfast tray. "Anything else urgent?" "Yes," Graham muttered, eyes still locked on the folder. "I want full surveillance on Claire." Where she goes. Who she sees. Everything. Logan blinked. Is that wise? I didn't ask for moral clarity. I asked for intel. Logan nodded stiffly and left the room. Graham rubbed his temples. The morning news on the TV played a segment about FinTech Corp's soaring valuation, his empire still thriving. At least on the surface. But behind it, he could already feel the tremor beneath the marble. At noon, Sylvia Cohen entered with a briefcase and a stormy expression. She didn't sit. You want to talk damage control? She said flatly. Then let's start with what Claire knows. She knows what I allow her to. Graham said, forcing a smirk. And what she thinks she knows is probably theatrical at best. Sylvia didn't laugh. Instead, she opened her briefcase and laid out 2 documents. The prenup and the company's board bylaws. Clause 9.3, she said, tapping the prenup. Infidelity, emotional or physical, triggers immediate forfeiture of all joint assets, including majority voting rights in Langford Trust Holdings. Graham leaned forward. I thought we redlined that clause. We didn't. You initialed it. Twice. She flipped to the signature page. There it was. Graham Langford. Arrogant flourish and all. He laughed. But it was dry. Cornered. Okay. But that only matters if she can prove something. Sylvia crossed her arms. You've been publicly photographed leaving events with Sienna Merritt. You used company cards at the White Orchid Hotel. If she links those. He waved her off. I'll deny. Say she forged them. Graham, she said. Her voice razor sharp now. You'll lose board power if this goes to court with evidence. He fell silent. The leather chair beneath him suddenly felt like it was made of thorns. His empire, built on control, image, leverage, now balanced on a single woman's case file. He reached for his phone. There were dozens of missed calls and emails. But one message, buried among the noise, caught his attention. No number, no name, just text. Ask your father about Project Stratus. In a glass-walled room above Manhattan. Claire Whitmore was not grieving, she was strategizing. The conference table was littered with legal pads. 2 laptops, a cold espresso, and a copy of the prenup Graham had clearly forgotten he signed. Outside, the city blinked with its usual urgency, taxis honking below. The Hudson reflecting an angry sky, but inside, time moved to the beat of Claire's decisions. I want a clean 3-phase rollout, she said, underlining a line on her notepad. Legal exposure first, then PR reframing, then financial dismantling. Ethan, seated across from her, leaned back and smiled. You're disturbingly calm. She didn't look up. I was calmer giving birth to my dissertation. He chuckled. You remember what you used to say at NYU? Ethics aren't slogans, they're daily decisions. Still believe that? I have to, she said. Or I wouldn't be able to do this without setting fire to everything. Robert Whitmore, her father, sat silently at the end of the table, hands folded over a cane he didn't need to use but carried like a moral gavel. His silence wasn't disapproval, it was alignment. The kind passed down through blood and courtroom battle scars. Noah, their pie, entered briskly, his windbreaker still damp. Victor's onto me, he said. I saw one of his men at the corner bodega. Probably just shadowing for now. But it's not subtle. Claire nodded once. We expected that. Noah tossed a USB on the table. That's the first batch. There's something you'll want to see under the shell corp named Stratus Holdings. Ethan plugged it in and turned the screen toward Miles Denton. The accountant, young, anxious, but with that flicker of loyalty born not of contracts but of conscience. Miles tapped through files, then stopped. There's more than one account. 3. Actually, all routed through Nevada, and one offshore in Belize. But they're linked by the same transaction tags. Claire leaned forward. Linked to what? Internal fintech transfers labeled Special Advisory Retainer. I thought they were legal fees. But they lead to a dummy firm, Smith Consulting. Her eyes narrowed. During which months? Miles didn't answer immediately. He just turned the laptop toward her again. 3rd trimester. The exact weeks she'd been on bed rest. Under the impression Graham was finalizing nursery designs and clearing his schedule for the baby. Claire didn't blink. We subpoena those transfers. Ethan, draft it tonight. Ethan looked up, voice lower now. We have a financial bomb. What we need now is a moral one. Sienna Reyes expected rage. She got tea and a contract. The cafe was quiet. tucked between a closed gallery and a flower shop just beginning to set out its morning buckets. It was the kind of place built for whispered apologies and discreet rendezvous. Claire had chosen it with precision. Sienna arrived 10 minutes late, her oversized sunglasses shielding more than just sleep-deprived eyes. She hesitated at the door, scanning the room until she saw Claire, already seated, already composed. No drama, no cold stare, just chamomile tea and a manila envelope. "You're calmer than I imagined," Sienna said, slipping into the chair opposite. Claire folded her hands. "Emotion is a luxury when the stakes are this high." Sienna exhaled slowly. "You should hate me." "I don't," Claire said, "but I do need you to choose who you want to be moving forward." She slid the envelope across the table. Inside, immunity terms drafted by Ethan, carefully worded. Ironclad if honored. Sienna didn't touch it. "You think this is my redemption arc?" "I think you're in danger," Claire replied. "And I think you know exactly what Victor is capable of." A silence passed. Then Sienna reached into her purse and produced a photograph, one Claire had given to her. Deliberately. Graham, in a dark tuxedo. His hand at Sienna's waist. Both laughing in front of a gala step and repeat. The timestamp was the same night Claire had been rushed to the hospital with early contractions. Sienna flinched. "He said you were out of town." Claire said nothing. Sienna looked down at the envelope. "You don't know what they have on me. I know about your sister. Columbia, full scholarship, now under review. I know Victor sent the letter. I know you're scared." Sienna's eyes filled, but she held steady. "If I give you what I have, I lose everything. If you don't," Claire said gently, "you lose yourself." Sienna hesitated, then reached into her coat and pulled out a USB. Sliding it across the table like it was hot to the touch. "This has every message he ever sent me, including the threats. There's an encrypted chain tied to insider trades on IPO days." Graham, he knew. Claire didn't reach for it. Not yet. She looked Sienna directly in the eye. "You're not the villain, Sienna. You're the witness. But that's only useful if you survive the fallout." Sienna nodded, her breath trembling. They stood together. Claire touched her arm, not forgiveness, but solidarity. As they stepped out into the early morning mist, Ethan approached from across the street, phone in hand, eyes scanning for tails. But before they could move further, a man in a gray suit emerged from a doorway. Expression unreadable. He leaned in close to Claire and whispered, "Mr. Langford wants a word." Victor Langford didn't flinch before senators, but his son's wife made him uneasy. She didn't shout, didn't posture. She moved like a chess player, always 2 steps ahead, and that made her dangerous. Victor sat in his study, the fire crackling behind him, untouched bourbon sweating beside the morning paper. The Langford estate was silent, save for the hum of encrypted servers hidden beneath the East Wing library. "She's not going away," Branson muttered, standing by the window with a secured tablet in hand. Victor didn't look up. "No, and the press is starting to sniff." Branson nodded, then handed him the device. On screen, a PR memo drafted at Victor's command. It detailed Claire's supposed emotional instability, hinted delicately at postpartum paranoia, and all but confirmed Graham wasn't the biological father of the child. Victor read it silently. "I want that version ready to go viral in 2 days. Seed the forums tonight. We'll need a trigger," Branson said. "A scandal, or a rumor to float." Victor leaned back. "We'll give them one." He turned to his PR lead, seated stiffly near the mantel. "Use the photos, the ones with Claire and that adjunct from Columbia. Make it look romantic. Push the academic affair angle. You're sure that's not traceable? She's smart, not perfect." Meanwhile, a second team, deep in the tech bunker beneath the estate, was refining a digital breadcrumb trail. The hacker chief, a quiet woman named Kay, showed Victor a chain of transactions linking Miles Denton to fictitious offshore accounts. "These will hold up under casual scrutiny," she said, "long enough to muddy waters." Victor grunted. "I don't need long, just enough for the board to panic." "And the files from Smith Consulting?" Branson asked. "Already in the forgery pipeline. If Claire's side leaks anything legitimate, we leak a bigger, faker mess. Bury them in noise." Victor stood, straightening his cufflinks. "Burn the truth, and salt the earth." But across the city, Claire was already moving. Her contact at Whitmore and Hayes flagged an anomaly in the firm's digital surveillance sweep. Encrypted bursts from Langford estate targeting blogger inboxes and media freelancers. Claire didn't flinch. She called Ethan. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Worse, Ethan replied. They're preparing a fake mental health record. Claire stared at her screen, then closed the laptop with a single, chilling click. Activate Phoenix. Just before Victor could strike, Claire lit her fuse. The rain outside struck the windows like a steady drumbeat. But inside the PR war room, every second snapped like dry kindling. Claire stood before the camera. Back straight, voice level, not shaking. Not desperate, just clear. My name is Claire Whitmore Langford. I am not a victim. I am a mother reclaiming my voice. She paused, not to gather herself, but to let the weight settle. For years, I believed in privacy as strength, in silence as grace, but silence is how abusers survive. So today, I choose light. Today, I choose accountability. Ethan gave a silent nod from behind the teleprompter. Across the room, Marla James, their PR firebrand, already had her fingers flying across the keyboard, prepping the rollout. Every second counted. The recording ended. Claire stepped away, her face unreadable. Robert handed her a bottle of water and murmured, "You just changed the tone of this war." Outside the control room, the Phoenix protocol unfolded like a symphony, pre-written, pre-vetted, now perfectly timed. At 2:17 p.m., Claire's video hit her verified social media accounts. At 2:19, Ethan submitted a formal complaint to the SEC, complete with attachments from Sienna's email trail. At 2:21, Miles Denton, patched in remotely from a secure location, flushed out the internal documents linking Graham to the shell companies under Smith Consulting. All clean, all time-stamped. By 2:23, Marla's press release was picked up by Bloomberg and Reuters. At 2:30, Claire's op-ed dropped on Business World and the Atlantic Finance edition. The headline read, "Justice is not revenge. A former ethics professor's open letter to corporate America." Its final line echoed through every boardroom. If reputation is a currency, then ethics are the only bank account that can't be forged. By 3 p.m., fintech's stock dipped 5%. By 3:47 p.m., it had dropped 11%. Emergency board meeting. Ethan smiled. They're panicking. Claire didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply whispered, "Good, now we keep control." Then Robert's phone buzzed. He glanced down, and a rare flicker crossed his face. He handed the screen to Claire. A Department of Justice tweet, accompanied by a press release. Cybersecurity breach at Fintech Corp. Independent contractor Branson Caldwell, alias K, arrested this afternoon following anonymous tip to FBI. Claire read it once, then again. "Victor will know it was me," she said. Robert didn't blink, then let him. Graham Langford had never stood in a boardroom without his father's shadow until now. But the shadow hadn't vanished. It had grown, warped into something else, something heavier, something watching. The penthouse was still untouched from the night Claire left. Her jasmine diffuser was gone, but a faint trace lingered. Graham hated how he noticed. He stared at his phone, thumb hovering above the last message she'd sent months ago. It had been mundane, about pediatrician schedules and a dinner guest list. He'd replied with a thumbs-up emoji. The moment crystallized now as damning. He looked up as Sylvia entered, her expression unreadable. "The board's been briefed. Your father's flying in from Connecticut. He wants to see you, immediately." "Did you tell him about the SEC subpoena?" Graham asked. "No, but they will. It hit your corporate email 5 minutes ago." She handed over the envelope with practiced detachment. "Graham, it's real now." He didn't open it, just pocketed it and nodded. "Let's go." Langford Estate loomed like a cathedral to hubris. The oak-paneled study smelled of old cigars and older secrets. Victor stood at the window, looking out over the rain-soaked grounds. "You've lost control," Graham said before his father could speak. Victor didn't turn. "Control is never lost. It's ceded, and only by fools. You used Claire. You used me." Victor finally faced him. "You think marriage was your idea? You were hemorrhaging sympathy in the press. She made you palatable. And you, young, dumb, and desperate for approval, bit the hook like a trout." Graham's breath caught, but he didn't look away. "I loved her." "No," Victor snapped. "You wanted her. You loved what she made you look like. But love? Love is leverage wasted. A long silence. Graham glanced at the room. The same desk where Victor had taught him how to read stock tickers. How to bluff a room full of investors. How to ignore his own mother's funeral. You told me love was weakness. It is. He turned to leave. Victor didn't stop him. Halfway down the estate's long stone hallway, Graham pulled out his phone and typed slowly. No more lies. I'm ready to listen. He hit send. For the first time in days, the knot in his chest loosened. Only slightly, but it was enough. He reached the gate just as his driver's phone buzzed. The man passed it back to him. Face pale. Sir, it's from the SEC. Graham opened the message. Subpoena. Graham Langford. Fintech Corp. Complicity in fraudulent transactions. Case ID. 842GF. The crown cracked. And this time, the pieces were sharp. Claire didn't need to set fire to the Langford empire. It was already rotting from within. The SEC building in Lower Manhattan was a brutalist relic of another era, cold stone. Glass. And the faint scent of fear. Claire stepped through its revolving doors not as a petitioner, but as a catalyst. Ethan walked beside her, briefcase in hand, and Miles trailed behind with a hard drive clutched like it might explode. In the waiting room, a muted television cycled through the morning's headlines. Fintech collapse rumors. Langford stock plunges. Former ethics professor files federal complaint. Claire adjusted her blazer. They're not rumors anymore. Upstairs, the meeting room smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. The SEC commissioner was sharp-eyed, gray-haired, and gave no indication of whose side he leaned toward. Ethan opened the laptop and inserted the drive. 10 years of financial records, both ledgers and mirrored backups. We've traced shell entities tied to laundering, asset diversion, and false PR seeding. Miles, sweating slightly, leaned forward. There are timestamps that match specific market manipulations. Look at March 3, 2020. That accidental leak about the IPO delay? It was fabricated, used to short the stock. The commissioner leaned in, frowning as data scrolled. Claire opened a folder. This is Sienna Reyes's sworn testimony. She corroborates insider threats and confirms that funds were moved through Smith Consulting, a firm created solely to siphon company cash. The commissioner flipped through the signed affidavit. Sienna, patched in via encrypted feed from a safe house, appeared on-screen. Her voice, though flat, carried weight. Victor Langford threatened my family if I didn't cooperate. Everything I'm saying is true. I kept the emails. I kept everything. The room was silent except for the soft tap of the commissioner's pen. Claire leaned forward. You know what this means. The Langford name is not invincible. An hour later, the press release was drafted. By sunset, the SEC officially froze all assets under Victor Langford's personal and executive control. That same evening, the FinTech board, shaken and desperate, voted to suspend both Victor and Graham pending investigation. Claire watched the news scroll from her office. She didn't smile. There was no champagne, no catharsis, just a steady heartbeat and a deeper inhale. Ethan raised a brow. Feels like the roof's finally caving in. Claire shook her head. Just the scaffolding. The foundation is next. Her phone buzzed. She stared at the screen. A voicemail from an unknown number. She hit play. Victor's voice slithered through the speaker. There's still one play left. Son, to reclaim his throne, Graham must sell Claire's dignity. Or walk away, forever. The lights on FinTech's media floor were brutal. Surgical. Even without the heat, Graham could feel the sweat rising under his collar. Victor stood behind the glass wall, arms folded, flanked by PR staffers armed with talking points and weak smiles. This is your moment, Victor said, handing him the statement. You say what's on the page, and the board will reconsider your suspension. Graham skimmed the document. It painted Claire as erratic, fragile, potentially manipulative. It referenced unnamed medical evaluations, fabricated, and implied Alex's paternity was a private matter requiring legal clarity. He felt sick. Say it, and you get your seat back. Victor added, you get the company, the legacy. Graham didn't respond. Instead, he turned away, stepped into the green room, and pulled out his phone. A notification lingered at the top, an unopened video Claire had sent him over 6 months ago. Subject. For when you're ready. He tapped play. The image was grainy but unmistakable. A blurry sonogram, a soft, Steady heartbeat. Claire's voice behind the camera. Soft with wonder. That's Alex. Week 20. He kept kicking right after. Like he knew you'd see this. Even if you weren't ready yet. Graham sat still. The PR aide knocked on the door. 2 minutes. Mr. Langford. At the podium. Cameras flashed. Live feeds blinked red. He glanced at the statement. Then at the faces waiting to see what version of him would speak. He took a breath. I was told to read a statement today. One that would deflect, distort, and destroy. Instead, I'll say this. Silence. I betrayed my wife. I tried to silence her. I believed power could erase consequence. I was wrong. Gasps echoed through the press corps. I will not continue the cover-up. I will not weaponize my son's mother to save my title. I refuse to be my father. Behind the glass, Victor's lips pressed into a furious line. He moved to leave. Graham looked into the cameras. Let the truth stand, let justice speak, and let my silence end here. Back at the Whitmore office, Claire held her phone, knuckles white. Ethan stood beside her, waiting for a reaction. Graham's voice faded into silence. She dropped the phone. Tears welled, unforced. Ethan asked softly, "You okay?" Claire blinked once. Maybe. For the first time, a legacy collapsed. A child born. A woman standing taller than before. The windows of Columbia Medical Center framed a world in spring bloom, dogwoods budding. Light catching on freshly cleaned glass. The scent of renewal floating faintly through the cracks. Claire cradled Alexander against her chest. Skin to skin. His breathing was irregular, searching, as if trying to place himself in the world. She whispered, "Justice may take time, but it comes." A soft knock interrupted. Graham entered, hesitating by the door. No flowers, no grand gestures. Just a quiet man with unsteady hands and something like clarity in his eyes. "I won't fight custody," he said, voice low. "Not now, not ever. Whatever you decide, I'll honor it." Claire didn't reply, but she didn't look away either. He lingered just a moment longer before turning to leave. On April 2nd, the marble halls of the Metropolitan Museum shimmered under soft lighting and strategic silence. Claire stood before a modest crowd, donors, journalists, former students, and a few newly minted allies. She signed the memorandum for the Alexander Fund. Ethan stood behind her, proud and still protective, and Robert watched from the side, nodding as if silently blessing each word. The fund would seed ethical startups, support women-led ventures, and teach corporate governance with conscience. "It's not about vengeance," Claire said into the mic. "It's about what comes after." Screens across the room flashed headlines in real time. Victor Langford resigns amid investigation. Fintech board announces restructuring. Graham Langford cooperates in ongoing SEC inquiry. But none of those names held the weight they once did. Later that evening, at a closing panel, Claire sat flanked by 2 CEOs and a law school dean. Her closing words were simple. "Redemption is never gifted. It's earned, through pain and clarity. If I've learned anything, it's that dignity begins where silence ends." As applause rose, Ethan's phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. He stepped outside, opened the email, and read the subject line twice. Stratus was only the beginning. Attached, an encrypted folder. He looked up, toward the skyline. The war was over, but something else had just begun. Though the Langford empire once towered above scrutiny, it fell not to violence, but to the steady force of truth. Claire's strength wasn't in vengeance, it was in refusing to be silenced. Even when power stood against her, justice, though late, arrived cloaked not in thunder, but in clarity, and its echo reshaped everything. Like light through stained glass, the truth fractured illusions and illuminated what mattered. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth.